Surrender is the language of trust. Many believers claim to have faith, but true faith begins where your understanding ends. There comes a point in every man's walk with God where your wisdom, your experience, and even your prayers seem insufficient. It is in that place that surrender becomes your greatest weapon. When you truly trust God, you stop trying to figure everything out. You stop manipulating outcomes and calculating how he will do it. You simply rest in the assurance that his ways are higher and his thoughts are perfect toward you. There is a kind of peace that comes when you finally say, Lord, I don't know how, but I know you will. That peace is not the absence of storms, it is the presence of confidence. Many times we think surrender means passivity, but surrender is spiritual activity. It means you have reached a level of faith where you no longer wrestle with God over what belongs to him. You stop asking when and why, and you begin to say, Lord, let your will be done. That moment of release is where divine power begins to move. When you hold on too tightly to what you can't control, you block the flow of grace. God does not compete with your will. As long as you insist on handling it by yourself, he will quietly step back and let you see the limits of human strength. But the moment you surrender, heaven intervenes. The moment you acknowledge that your capacity has ended, divine wisdom begins to function. Many times, the miracle is not in what you're trying to fix. The miracle is in learning to let go. God never asks you to surrender because he wants to take something away from you. He asked because he wants to give you something better. When Abraham laid Isaac on the altar, it was not because God needed a sacrifice. It was because God wanted to reveal his nature as provider. Until you learn to lay down your Isaac, you will never see your Jehovah Jireh. Some of you are praying for God to open new doors, but your hands are too full holding what you refuse to release. God can only feel empty hands. Surrender means trusting that even when it doesn't look like it, God knows what he's doing. Sometimes he will lead you into seasons that make no sense, not to destroy you, but to train your heart to depend on him completely. The breaking process is not punishment, it's preparation. God cannot truly use a man who has not learned the beauty of brokenness. When you come to the end of yourself, that is where his strength begins. And here this trust is not proven in comfort, it's proven in confusion. Anyone can say, I trust God when everything is working, but real faith is tested when nothing makes sense. When you choose to worship instead of worry, when you choose to be still instead of panicking, you are declaring to the heavens and to hell that your confidence is not in circumstances, but in the character of God. There is an invisible hand guiding your life. You may not see it, you may not feel it, but it is there. That hand knows where to lead you, how to restore you, and when to exalt you. Stop fighting battles that only God can win. Stop losing sleep over what his peace can settle. Let God handle it. Trust him with your pain, your plans, your timing, and your tomorrow. You will realize that what you surrendered in tears, he will return in glory. God works beyond human logic. The ways of God often defy reason, yet they are always perfect. Many times, we find ourselves questioning why certain things happen, why certain doors close, or why prayers seem unanswered. But you must understand that God does not operate within the limitations of human understanding. His wisdom is ancient, his methods mysterious, and his results undeniable. The journey of faith will often confront your intellect, because faith is not designed to make sense, it is designed to make you trust. There are seasons when God will lead you through paths that seem to contradict the promise. You heard him clearly, you obeyed him sincerely, yet what you see does not look like what he said. That is the testing ground of trust. God's silence in those moments is not absence. It is proof that he's working in a realm you cannot see. He hides his process because if he revealed everything at once, you would interfere with his plan. Logic demands clarity, but faith demands surrender. Sometimes God will allow confusion to protect you. What you call delay is often divine redirection. What you perceive as rejection is God saving you from premature exposure. There are things you prayed for that did not happen, not because God ignored you, but because he loved you too much to give you what would destroy you. The same God who opens doors also closes them. And both actions are an expression of his goodness. His no is as merciful as his yes. The challenge with many believers is that we want to understand God before we obey him. But he never promised we would always understand. He only asks us to trust. The Bible says, asterisk, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Asterisk. That means your logic will sometimes betray you. If you try to calculate God's movement, you will miss his miracle. God will never fit into the formula of human reasoning. His plan for your life is too divine to be reduced to logic. There are moments when God will use the most unlikely situations to bring forth his glory. He used the shepherd's rod to part the sea, a boy's lunch to feed thousands, and a cross to redeem the world. Everything about God's method challenges logic. That's why when he begins to move in your life, you must resist the temptation to overthink. His ways are higher than yours. And what seems strange now will make perfect sense later. What you call a delay today may be the setup for your destiny tomorrow. The proof that you trust God is your willingness to obey when it makes no sense. When he says forgive, even when they haven't apologized. When he says give, even when it feels like you have nothing left. When he says be still, even when everything in you wants to act. These are the moments when heaven records your faith. Every act of obedience, especially when it contradicts logic, becomes an altar that invites God's supernatural intervention. So stop trying to predict how God will do it. Stop measuring his power by your past experiences. He is not limited by time, not confined by circumstance, and not bound by the opinions of men. God can use a mistake and turn it into a miracle. He can take what was meant to destroy you and make it your platform for glory. When you step aside and allow him to walk in his own way, you will see that his wisdom is flawless. Trust him when it makes sense, and trust him even more when it doesn't. The same hand that wrote your beginning already knows your ending. What looks confusing today will soon become clear. Let your heart rest in the truth that God is too wise to be mistaken and too loving to be cruel. When you cannot trace his hand and trust his heart, he is still working beyond logic, beyond sight, beyond reason, yet always for your good. Delays are not denials. One of the greatest tests of faith is learning to trust God's timing. When it seems as though life has paused, when prayers linger in silence, and when expectations seem unmet, remember, God is never late. He may not come when you expect, but he always arrives at the perfect time. The delay you see is not a sign of rejection. It is the evidence of divine preparation. There are blessings that must mature before they can be safely placed in your hands. If God gave you everything you asked for immediately, some of those answers would destroy you instead of bless you. In the waiting, God is working. He's aligning people, shaping circumstances, and refining your heart. You might not see it, but heaven is busy on your behalf. Waiting seasons are never wasted seasons. They are classrooms of trust where your patience, humility, and obedience are tested. God is not just preparing the promise, he's preparing you for the promise. Sometimes what you call delay is God saying, I'm still building you to carry what you're asking for. You cannot rush divine timing, because premature success can become a curse. When Joseph was thrown into a pit and later in prison, it looked like delay. Every step seemed to move him farther from the dream God gave him. But while people saw delay, God saw direction. The pit was not punishment, it was positioning. The prison was not the end, it was training. When the right time came, everything connected perfectly. That's how God works. He hides your destiny in time so that when it unfolds, no man can take credit for it. Many times, what we interpret as silence is actually strategy. God hides his movement behind time so that he can reveal his glory in fullness. If you understood what he was setting up, you would thank him for every delay. There are battles he's fighting that you cannot see. Doors he's closing that would have harmed you. And opportunities he's holding back because your character isn't ready to sustain them yet. The God who makes all things beautiful in his time cannot fail. In those long nights of waiting, when you are tempted to give up, remember that delay is not evidence of God's absence. It is proof of his love. His timing is not to frustrate you, but to protect you. Every waiting believer is a growing believer. Every delay is an invitation to deeper trust. When you stop fighting the process and start trusting his pace, peace begins to fill your heart. Faith is not only about believing for what you want, it's also about believing in the timing of when you will have it. There is a kind of strength that only waiting produces. When you learn to trust God in delay, your roots go deeper, your vision becomes clearer, and your heart becomes anchored. Impatience births mistakes, but waiting births maturity. The waiting room of God is not a punishment, it's preparation for manifestation. If you quit too early, you will never see what God was about to do next. So when heaven seems silent and answers seem slow, keep praying, keep believing, and keep trusting. The same God who promised is faithful to perform. He has not forgotten you. He is simply arranging your story so that when it unfolds, his glory will be undeniable. Remember, every delay in God's kingdom has purpose written all over it. He may seem slow, but he's never still. The delay is only a setup for a greater unveiling. When it finally happens, you will understand why it took so long. And you will lift your hands and say, Lord, you were right on time. Rest is the proof of faith. When a man truly trusts God, his heart stops striving. Worry loses its authority and anxiety loses its voice. Rest is not idleness. It is a posture of confidence. It is the calm assurance that the same God who brought you this far will carry you to the end. There is a peace that defies explanation. A peace that exists not because everything is perfect, but because you know who is in control. This peace is not human, it is divine. It is born when you finally let go of the urge to fix everything and allow God to be God. Many people pray but still panic. They declare trust with their lips but hold on to fear in their hearts. But faith without rest is not complete. If you still worry after praying, it means you have not truly handed it over. God cannot fully work in a heart that keeps taking back what it once surrendered. Resting in God is not carelessness, it is spiritual intelligence. It means you have reached a point where you believe that no situation can intimidate the power of God. When Jesus slept in the storm, it wasn't because the storm wasn't real. It was because he knew who he was and who was with him. The disciples saw danger, but he saw dominion. That is what rest looks like, to sleep in the same storm others are drowning in. Real faith is not proven by how loudly you speak in prayer, but by how calmly you can wait afterward. Your ability to rest in uncertainty reveals how much you trust the certainty of God. There is a level of peace that comes when you truly understand that nothing surprises God. Before you arrived at that problem, he already had the solution. Before you cried, he had already planned your comfort. Before the need arose, provision was already set. The God you serve is not reacting. He's orchestrating. When you live with that awareness, rest becomes natural. You stop living as though everything depends on you and start living as though everything depends on him. Rest is not inaction, it is direction. It is knowing when to be still so God can move. Sometimes the reason you feel exhausted is because you are fighting battles that are not yours. There are burdens you were never designed to carry. The more you struggle to control what only God can handle, the more peace slips away. When you rest in his promises, you invite his power. Rest is a declaration that says, Lord, I trust you, even when I don't understand you. The peace of God does not mean the absence of storms. It means the presence of stability in the midst of them. Anyone can have peace when everything is fine, but real faith produces peace when nothing seems certain. It is choosing to sing while you wait, to praise when it hurts, and to smile when you don't have answers. That is the strength of a believer who truly trusts. There will always be noise around you. The pressure of time, the voice of fear, the opinions of men. But when you have entered the rest of God, none of that can shake you. You no longer move by panic. You move by purpose. You no longer react to fear. You respond to faith. Rest becomes your weapon against the enemy's distraction. So when life feels uncertain, choose rest over restlessness. Choose to trust instead of trying to control. God never called you to live in worry. He called you to live in his peace. The same hand that holds the universe is holding your future. And when you finally learn to rest in that truth, you will discover that what you thought was falling apart was actually falling into place. God can redeem what seems wasted. There are moments in life when it feels like too much time has passed, too many opportunities have been lost, and too many mistakes have been made. You look back and wonder if anything good can still come out of what you've been through. But hear this, God is a redeemer of time, of people, and of purpose. Nothing is ever too broken for him to restore, and nothing is ever too late for him to use. What you call wasted, God calls raw material for his glory. Sometimes the pain you thought would destroy you becomes the very soil where your destiny grows. God does not waste experiences. Even your tears are tools in his hands. The moments of regret you wish you could erase, he uses to shape wisdom and compassion in you. The failures you thought disqualified, you are often the same things he uses to make you a vessel of testimony. When God begins to redeem, he doesn't just repair, he restores beyond what was lost. There are people who think they've gone too far, who believe they've missed their divine moment. But you must understand that time is a servant of God. He does not live within it. He rules over it. When he steps into your story, he can compress years of loss into moments of restoration. In one encounter, he can make up for a lifetime of disappointment. He can restore wasted opportunities, revive broken relationships, and resurrect forgotten dreams. Nothing is ever truly wasted when it's placed in the hands of the one who multiplies loaves and fish. The enemy often uses regret to paralyze people, whispering that it's too late, that you failed beyond redemption. But the cross is God's eternal answer to that lie. Redemption means God has the final word. He can take what was meant for evil and turn it into the very thing that pushes you toward destiny. The same Peter who denied Jesus 3 times was the same man chosen to lead thousands to salvation. That's what divine redemption looks like. It rewrites stories that men had already concluded. Every scar carries a message. When you let God redeem your story, your pain becomes a ministry, your wounds become wisdom, and your past becomes a platform. He never wastes a broken heart or a painful season. He transforms it until even you can no longer recognize the ashes from which beauty emerged. Sometimes The proof that God has redeemed you is not that the memory disappears, but that it no longer hurts when you remember. There are situations that look like the end, but were actually transitions. What you lost was not wasted. It was an exchange. God was taking away what could limit you to give you what could lift you. Some doors had to close so your destiny could open. Some people had to walk away so your peace could return. The things that left your life didn't ruin you, they refined you. The Redeemer never takes without restoring in greater measure. So don't weep too long over what seems wasted. Lift your eyes and see the hand of God weaving restoration into your story. The years you think you lost will be years of double harvest. The tears you cried will water the ground of your next miracle. God is too faithful to let your pain be pointless. Every setback will serve a purpose. Every loss will birth a lesson. And every delay will lead to divine compensation. Trust him to redeem what you cannot rebuild. The same God who turned a crucifixion into resurrection can turn your regret into rejoicing. Nothing is beyond his reach, and no story is beyond his grace. What you surrendered in tears, he will return in glory. It may have looked wasted, but with God, even your ruins would rise again. Your trust becomes a testimony. Every time you choose to believe God in the face of uncertainty, you are writing a story that heaven will use to encourage others. Trust is not just a private decision. It becomes a public declaration that God is faithful. When you refuse to give up, when you hold on through pain, when you keep praying, even when you can't see results, your life begins to speak louder than your words ever could. People may not understand your process, but they will not be able to deny